Yeah, I think we'll see how many people come today. Need a few people signed up. Hi, everybody. We'll get started in just a second. I keep forgetting to get some kind of like music or some kind of app integration for this time in the beginning of the session when we're just waiting for folks to trickle in. How's your day been, Amalia? Good?
It's been good. I can't see everybody. Is that a thing?
Yeah, it's just us. So like
Oh, I
it's
get it.
webinar, so it's just
Okay.
you and I, and then everybody is watching,
Okay.
but no one's on screen with
You know,
us.
my day, we just had a new class of students start. So um, it is really fun, because they're getting to do
Mhm.
everything for the first time. So it's
Yes. Oh
great.
my gosh. So
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. I know.
Well,
I really
let's
love working in the teaching firm. Go ahead.
yeah, it's so nice this time of year to get some like fresh energy going. And I would definitely love to hear more about that like throughout this talk. So please squeeze in any farm share tidbits you want to talk about. But let's start and people can trickle in during their lunch as they show up. But I'll kick us off. Hey everybody, I'm Haley Wood with the National Farmers Union. I'm a food safety project coordinator with the Local Food Safety Collaborative. Um, and I'm really thrilled to join you this afternoon to talk about U-Picks and food safety with Amalia Staggs, who's based here in Central Texas, just like I am. And I'm gonna make sure I got the chat on for everybody real quick. Let me make sure everybody has access to this. Okay, I'm gonna open up the chat now. I think everybody should be able to see that. If you can't, somebody will let me know. But feel free to type in like where you're coming in from and anything, if you have any questions throughout this, we'll get to it. But so today we're going to be talking about you pick or pick your own operations and what kind of considerations farm operators and farmers should take when having the general public come onto the farm. Amalia is somebody I've known in the Texas community here for a few years, and we work on Farm Share Austin, which is a 13-acre certified organic farm and farm incubator program in Eastern Travis County, which is just on the outside of Austin, Texas. So if you're here today, we're going to be talking a little bit about marketing strategy, things like agritourism, obviously food safety, maybe some labor too, and just introduce Amalia, and I'll definitely let Amalia introduce herself too. And Amalia didn't know being a farmhand was a thing until 2020, doing some volunteer research in town, and it, signing up to the world of farming was kind of her first introduction into the depth and richness of Central Texas farming ranching community, and led her to other education opportunities. This also helped her get into harvest and a pack manager position for a season at Middle Ground Farm, which is in Utley,
Hmm.
Texas.
Hmm.
And then led her back to her dream job as farm manager now at Farm Share Austin. So I'm really grateful to have you here to talk to us about Farm Share and food safety. And I would love for you to introduce yourself to everybody else too.
Thank you so much, Haley. Yeah, thank you for inviting me to join y'all. Yes, I'm Amalia. I am one of two farm managers at Farm Share Austin. I am mostly responsible for field production, so what's going on out there. And then we have another farm manager who does the front of house stuff like harvest and sales and distribution and things like that. And we obviously work very closely together. Yeah, as Haley mentioned, I am late to this party. I had a whole 17-year career in finance and tax professional services research role. And I feel very grateful and blessed that I get a whole second act doing something that I just am completely in love with, which is farming. So I just briefly, yeah, like Haley said, I started volunteering in the fall of 2020 and FarmShare Austin and a couple other local farms. I just was going out there as often as I could. And at FarmShare Austin, we are a teaching farm. We do two kinds of things. We do food access work, and we teach adults who think they want to have a career in agriculture. And I just fell in love with this place. And was kind of, they do two educational cohorts a year. So one is from like February to the end of June, and then a second one starts in August and goes through the end of December. And it's about 12 students, anywhere from 7 to 12 students a year. And I was just kind of trying to hold on to figure out how I could apply for one of these classes. And they gave me a call a week before the spring 2021 class started and said, "We've had someone defer. Would you like to take the program?" And I said, yes. And so I did that. That's a 5-month full immersion intensive, learn how to be a diversified vegetable grower, USDA certified organic. It's also very much from the small business perspective. We are a not-for-profit farm, so there's like that whole element of what that business looks like, but then also the entrepreneurship aspect of farming. You know, if you want to be an owner operator, you want to run your own farm, even if you want to be a farm manager, how does this business work? What are our goals? What do our finances look like? Where are we going to get land? Land is a huge issue here in Austin. And then I stayed on as assistant farm manager for 6 months, and then went and worked at a production farm for 6 months. And then timing is a weird and wonderful thing. And this farm manager role opened up at FarmShare Austin. So I came back. It continues to be more fun than I've ever had in my entire life. It's also the most challenging thing I've ever done, but it continues to be more fun than I have ever had in my entire life. It's awesome. So I basically I had some slides to show y'all, but I think I just ran through it, and Haley sent over some really great questions that I think if we just maybe talk through those quickly, or not quickly, but so I told you about myself, and I'll just say one thing about growing in Central Texas, and I know some of you are from around here, and some of you are not. I see Southern Oregon and Iowa and lots of cool places, Kentucky. Last summer, when it was over 100 degrees for 4 months, and in August, I went and visited a friend in Maine who has a horse farm. And I couldn't believe how green and moist and lush it all was. And I think I started it was in tears when I was flying back to Texas and just flying over the gray, brown, like just landscape. I mean, it was last summer was truly disturbing.
Yeah.
And I came back, and then of course the weather changes in Austin, Texas. And I'm like, I love Austin. I'm never leaving. But then that's when I realized, like, sure, I could go farm in Maine. I could go farm in the Pacific Northwest. I loved living in Seattle. I lived there for 3.5 years. But Seattle and Maine don't need farmers like me. Central Texas needs farmers like me and Haley. And those of you, I see Greg from Houston. So I'm going to try and see what we can do here in Central Texas to keep growing. And FarmShare is a big part of that. Part of our mission, like I said, is food access. In fact, I can read you our mission statement because that's an important bit. Our mission is to grow a healthy, just, and equitable local food system by increasing community food access and cultivating new farmers. We envision a future of resilient local food economies that ensure equitable access to food and the resources needed to farm. And so we're here to teach farmers, for the most part, farmers who want to stay in Central Texas. And growing here is its own kind of thing. And that's a whole nother webinar. But it's a challenge, and it's one that's worth sticking around for, in my opinion. I'm just going back to the questions.
Yeah.
So you pick events. They had started, so I came in like right in the middle of the pandemic. And because we're a not-for-profit, we rely on grants and donations, and we do this one big fundraiser event a year in the fall, in December, actually, early December. And at that time in 2020, it was called a We Pick event because we couldn't have people just come out to the farm and pick things. So what we did is we picked the vegetables and made boxes that people could order and then come pick up. You know, and of course it was social distancing, and we were still wearing our masks even outside and whatever. And so by the time I rolled into Farm Share, we were back to being able to have people on the farm. And so it's an event where you can purchase a bag for like 40 bucks, and it's a big bag. It holds like 40 pounds of vegetables. And you come out to the farm and you pick as many vegetables as you can fit in that bag. And we have a band, and we have the local culinary school comes and makes yummy treats, and we have sponsored drinks and cornhole. And we have our students and our alumni and staff, and everybody's out in the field, and we're showing you how to pick these vegetables. And people, it is so much fun to watch little kids learn how to dig carrots. It's just as much fun watching their mom and dad learn how to dig carrots. So it's a really heartwarming event. It's very wholesome. It's really fun. And we're always looking for ways to, you know, it's that weird tension between, it's a fundraiser. We're really trying to make a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And how do we make it accessible to our community? Because the people that we serve, you know, via food access, you know, I don't want to ask them to pay $40 for a bag of vegetables. Like, that's not right. But I want them to be able to be welcome to come celebrate. You know, the December is the best time of year for food in Central Texas. It's like when everything green, I mean, it's awesome. So we're constantly kind of trying to find that balance. Like, do we offer a sliding scale for the bags that we offer? Do we, you know, if you say that you're a customer of or like if you come to our mobile markets, or you participate in our curbside delivery program, that you get in for free, you know, things like that. So I will say it is a really fun event. And in terms of food safety, so one of the reasons I actually, it was timely when Haley asked if I would do this, because I just took the Food Safety Alliance, the grower training, the certification that you can get via. So yeah, it was 2 days. It can be very dull, but it's all stuff that I felt like I should know. Even though our farm, we're small enough, and Hot Spell is too, we're small enough that actually these rules that FSMA, the government regulations has set for food safety don't really apply to us. I mean,
we're exempt.
They should. Food safety is food safety. It should apply to everybody, but we don't have to report on it to the government. But once you get certified through this program, and they have them in every state. I think just because the timing worked out, I took it at the end of May, and I think it was out of Oregon State University, and it was via Zoom. They also have in-person trainings. And it cost like 40 bucks, I think, for the 2-day training. And you get a whole packet of materials. I mean, I got this whole big book. Well, you can't see it, but this big fat book that has everything you could possibly want to know in it. Just because I want to know what I should know, even if we don't always have the resources, or our systems aren't quite there yet, or we don't have the infrastructure to really, you know, like, it's part of the planning that I'm thinking of. Okay, well, if we can get, like, we get a grant for this, like, we can build a bigger wash and pack so that we can actually separate out our stuff, and, you know, all that good stuff. So that food safety plays into the day-to-day of farming. But for a You Pick event, like, that's kind of a different story, in that there's not that much we can do, except like the big stuff, like ensure that there's no dog poop out in the fields. That if we have found a contaminated area, that we have flagged it off for people not to go into. And we also do that generally, like, because we're still a working farm.
Mhm.
So we'll rope off the areas that are open to the public. So we do keep kind of a control. It's not like just people are willy-nilly all over the fields. They have specific sections that we have grown for them to be in. So that's a way to control what they do. One of the most important things is hand washing stations. So not just a hand washing station, and you can rent them. And
Mhm.
it's nice to rent them because they come with all the stuff and the foot pedal to make the water
Yes.
go, and it's really nice. Yeah, they're much
Love
nicer.
those.
So, and to not, yeah, me too. And to not just have one by the porta potties or by the bathrooms, but have one as people come into the field before after they buy their bags, that they wash their hands before they go out and pick vegetables. That they check the bottom of their shoes, that they're not tramping,
Mhm.
that they didn't step in something awful,
Yeah.
and dragging it into the fields. And without being dogmatic about it, but just, just make it a part of just what we do. When you come out and you pick vegetables, we always wash our hands when we go out there, and we wash our hands when we come back in. Um,
Creating like a culture
and
around
that's,
food safety practices, like before
yeah,
even the event starts, like just having those things in place.
yeah, yeah. We try to part of what it is also educating people out, when we're out in the field. Like, that's why we have all our students and alumni, if they can come, be actually out in the field, so that people aren't that we're just keeping an eye out for people that are sneezing or coughing all over everything.
For
That
sure.
we, have a gentle reminder to use your elbow, not your hand, when you're coughing or sneezing. And if you do have a coughing fit, kind of take it out to the side of the field so you're not coughing on vegetables. Um, and just general safety stuff. Like, we're putting farm implements out there. I don't want a 2-year-old, getting a hori knife in their hand and doing some damage to themselves or to
Yeah.
others. So it's
Mhm.
generally like, you pick the leaves of the kale. You don't have to take the whole kale plant. The head of cabbage gets cut here, and all that other stuff can just lay there, and you could just leave it there. Don't throw things at people. Put your tools back where you found them.
Yeah.
Just sort of general, kind of. It's not. I wouldn't even call it food safety, but it generally plays into safety and how you keep the event
Yeah.
sort of friendly for everybody.
That's what I was gonna say. I think food safety also kind of goes hand in hand with farm safety, especially when it's people's first
Yeah,
experience on the farm, because it is
yeah,
such a unique opportunity for people to come and experience what a farm is like. Because I think oftentimes on a production farm, or even someplace like Farm Share where you're working, teaching farm, there's not always that room and opportunity for people to come in casually. Or if you don't have volunteers, U-Picks are a great way to get people on the farm. And I'm wondering too, like, how do you balance the desire and the need for educating people on things like food safety, farm safety, and also providing like a hands-on experience, so that they're properly handling, they're like enjoying themselves. I guess, yeah, how do those two things kind of go hand in hand?
it's a really good question. We try to make it. So instead of like directing people what to do, can I show you? Can I come with you and do it? Like, I'll show, like, can I do it once and then you do it? Let me see how you do it. Um, Here's how I would stack the heavy stuff at the bottom of your bag, and then you can go get leafy vegetables, so that your leafy vegetables. So it's a lot of really, I mean, it's like learning how to farm. It is hands-on, in right next to people, showing them, can I make a suggestion? Can I show you how I would do it? Um, Here's why we often talk about, even with people, and I'm sure some of them don't care, but I always like to tell people the why. Why are we doing this way? What does it relate to in terms of farm safety, farm food safety, or just general, culture on a farm. And it becomes part of it just becomes part of the conversation. And I think our students and alumni, and actually one of our former students farms with Haley. Um, there is there's an ethos on this farm, that we are not just a teaching farm, but we are a learning farm. So we're all kind of in that mode, and we love to share this land and what we do here and what our programs are, and um and so, talking about how we keep ourselves safe, and like where the food goes, and how it was grown, like all of that, just becomes part of the conversation that we're having with people. And it's about having a
Yeah.
conversation, which is
Yes,
the fun part,
and it's ongoing. I think the thing about food safety, which maybe can be tiring to some people's mind, is that it's constantly shifting. It's always a conversation. It's never, um, you know, you learn it and you've got everything you need. It's always something
right?
that is evolving with time, with people. And yeah, I'm just so glad you brought this up about creating cultures around food safety and calling people in instead of, calling people out for doing something that they don't know, or it's their first time being on a farm and experiencing that. I also think that creates a better learning environment generally for people when you're like, let me show you how to do this, or here's how I would do it. And yeah, I know FarmShare really excels at that. I'm curious about, when you have these events, they do take so much like work from volunteers and staff, and even students. Um, what are some of the challenges you've seen posed by on-farm events like this? Maybe in preparation or after an event where you're like, okay, maybe we should do that differently next time, or like, oh, this happened and we weren't ready for that. Like, is there anything that comes to mind from the last few years of doing events like that?
um we have to remember, that not everybody knows what we know. When knowledge starts to become like embedded in your muscle memory, like to to I forget to tell people what I think is very basic, but they may not know
Mm.
that.
Hmm.
So, um, so really talking people through, like for example, you don't have to yank the whole kale plant out of the ground. Here's how you pick the leaves. We've had people walk off with entire plants, and we were like, wait a second, that was not
Words
intended.
and
How did that
all,
happen?
yeah.
Yeah, and where was that student assigned to that section? And um, so that, like, oh, okay, we really encourage. I mean, okay, let's be real. Not all, there's a reason that we like plants sometimes better than we like people. So, farmers they're not always the best at playing with others. You know what I mean? And so,
Sure.
but that's the kind of farm we are, is we are out in the public, and we are about community. And so it's encouraging, our alumni and staff, that when you're out there in the field, it's not just that you're standing there watching. We would like to encourage you to go out, like literally hold people's hands as they go out there. And some people don't want you to do that, and that's fine too, but make that attempt. Because, um, I've seen people like like little kids, like dragging a bunch of carrots along the ground. And I'm like, oh my God, please don't eat that. It's a food safety thing. Like, you don't know where other
Yeah.
people's feet have been walking in
Yeah.
that. So, like, gently, like, hey, can I have that one? Let's go pick another one. So that
Let's
they're not
trade.
taking home a drum. Yeah, let's trade. Exactly. So not taking home, a bad bunch of carrots that's another food safety thing. If it drops on the ground, it's a root vegetable, there's different rules for that. But um, so teaching people how to handle vegetables, teaching people, what part of the plant is the vegetable, and what part of the plant will continue to regenerate if it's that kind of vegetable. Um, we have run into issues on the front end. We have run into issues, with accessibility.
Mhm.
And I don't necessarily mean physical accessibility. Although we are a farm that, I mean, you could get a wheelchair down our roads. but probably not into the field.
Mhm.
We don't have raised beds. We grow everything in the ground. But more in terms of like socioeconomic
Sure.
accessibility. So, like for example, last year, and I'm not really involved in this planning part, except I am involved in the community, and we all kind of talk about this stuff together. So
Mhm.
we are a very collaborative organization. And one of the things last year, there was a price for the bags, and then there was also an entry fee to come to the event,
Mm,
because we have free food and we have a band and, blah, blah,
sure.
blah. And it was like $60 total.
Mhm.
And there were people that are my friends who were like, sorry, I'm not paying $60 to come. I mean, I know I'm gonna eat a lot of vegetables, but that's a lot of money. And certainly I mean, the people who live around in the neighborhood that surrounds the farm,
Yeah.
I doubt would pay $60 to come.
Mhm.
I mean, frankly, I don't know if I would pay $60 to come. I mean,
Sure.
I love giving money where I think
Yeah,
whatever.
that's
So,
real.
so it's
Yeah.
that tension. It's real, right? And so that tension between, okay, it is a fundraiser, but we have to trust that if we offer, like, say, if we offer a community price, if like the full support price is $40 for the bag, say that we have a community price for $20, that we're trusting that people are signing up with good intention and that
Mhm.
people aren't going to cheat
Right.
and take the $20 bag instead of the $40 bags.
Right.
Um, that maybe there will be 3 people of the 300 that come that will, take a cheaper bag, but I mean, I think there was that fear of like this, we really depend on the income that we make from this event.
Yeah.
And so we want to get the most for our dollar, but we also, like I see in the chat, that idea of inviting people in, of sharing what we do with the community is really, to me, is really the point of that event. It just happens to be a big fundraiser too,
Right.
if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Because, when it comes to costs like that, or, the kind of, I think a lot of organizations get in this position where it's like, well, we want to offer this thing, but we don't want it to be abused. But I also think there comes a level of trust with your community where it's like, if they need it, they will use it. And if they don't need it, hopefully they won't use it and they will support us in the way that we want to be supported. And that goes both ways of like being an organization that trusts your community and also creating a culture of trust that like, yeah, if people really are about this and they want to come in, they will do what is like right for them. Because I know that's also hard being in a position where you're relying on grants, you're relying on funding when it's available to kind of keep the farm afloat. And something I was curious if you had insight is like, how do the U-Picks, um, you know, play in the overall farm business side? Because FarmShare is so invested in teaching farmers about not only farming skills, but making sure people understand the business side of farming, which is like a huge pitfall because often we come to this field loving being outside, working with the actual material, and then comes the harder part of like then having the business side. So yeah, just curious if you have any insights about how the U-Picks kind of structure your business throughout the year and what the response is.
So for us, we just do that one U-Pick event a year. It is not our business model per se. In terms of what we grow on our farm, we're not a production farm in any way, shape, or form, but we do at least 50%, if not 60% of the food that we grow on the 4 acres that we have in production goes to our Fresh for Less program. And the rest we wholesale or donate. We and that works for us, but I want to talk because I know I have seen models where the whole business model is U-Pick based. So
Yeah.
there's a farm called Isle Acres up in Leander, and then there's a farm in Dallas around the Dallas area that I don't remember the name of, but they have it's a father-daughter team, the
Mm-hmm.
Dallas folks, and they have come to a couple of these farm conferences that happen a couple of times a year, and they do this great presentation on how they have set up their farm and the systems and how they invite people to subscribe to coming on, say, like you sign up to come every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m.
Mm,
to pick for an hour. And they do it by weight. It's the
mhm,
same amount per, it's a price per pound. Um, and what it has done for them is has saved on labor.
mhm.
Labor is the number one cost for
Yeah.
farms. It is a lot of work and there's no getting around it. But if you can have people come out and do that work themselves, that is saving on harvest labor that I would have to pay for.
Yeah.
I also think that the both farms, it's a different way of setting up your operation. Like
Mhm,
say you have wider walking paths and maybe you put rye down so you have something that you can mow so that people can, it's nice for people to walk up and down. You have certain tools that are really user friendly and aren't going to be dangerous and can be used by anyone with minimal instruction. That you have a checkout system that is easy, simple, same with how people sign up. That you're growing a consistent variety of different kinds of things all year round. And we're
mhm.
lucky or unlucky, however you want to think of it, that in Texas we can grow year round. I would not
Yeah.
recommend it. There are those
Uh-huh.
of us who think we should take July off and maybe even August if we can manage it.
Yes.
It's just too hot. But you can grow year round. I mean, cucumbers, melons, watermelons, squash, okra. Like there are vegetables that are happening over the summer.
For sure.
Um, and so the farm up in Leander, they're a family. They're like kind of like a homestead slash production farm. And they're starting, they were doing farm stand and farmers markets for a long time, and they've switched just recently to this U-Pick model.
Mm.
And like just this past spring, and they're going to do it again in the fall. And I think it's going really well. I ran into those farmers at a recent conference, and we're part of what we do for our students is we go on farm visits so that they're getting introduced into the Central Texas farming community, and we'll go visit Isle Acres. I think it's a really interesting business model
Yeah.
for people who don't necessarily have the resources to hire the labor necessary to take care of a 4-acre farm.
Yeah. I mean, even just being a small farm and working with a team of people, like we are all co-owners in our business, but even labor and paying ourselves is difficult. Like we could not even imagine getting some of the things we have done without looking at like volunteer structures or something similar. But we also understand like how hard the work is and we want people to feel compensated in some way. So I think U-Picks can be a really unique solution um, to the labor issue on smaller size farms. And there is like a bit more, I think, because of safety measures, like every time you have someone new come in, like there's always that education piece of making sure people are tuned to what's happening. But I want to think about too placement a little bit because we've talked a little bit about what it's like to grow here in Central Texas. And I'm curious if you see any sort of evolution happening in that space with these big um, events. Obviously, picking them to do in December instead of like August helps a lot for people who aren't outside as much. But we're living in the context of a lot of changing weather patterns, consumer preferences. Do you see U-Picks evolving or just generally you could even speak on farming evolving in Central Texas because of those things?
Absolutely. We used to do 2 U-Pick events a year. We would have a tomato U-Pick in June.
Mm, yeah.
And remember?
Mhm.
And we don't do that anymore because it's too bloody hot.
Mm,
June in Texas, in Central Texas, can be hotter than August sometimes because it's
yeah,
humid.
yeah.
And it's just miserable and it's stressful trying to make sure you've planted enough tomatoes and that they're all coming in and that, I mean, it was just, yeah, it was a lot of work for the staff. And so the December event is, because December in Central Texas can be lovely. And even if it's not lovely, it's like 50, it's still 50 degrees. It's
Yeah.
not that cold. It can be rainy, but not often. And so what we did, we decided to not do the June event because it wasn't fun for us and it's not fun for people to come out and do it. And so we replace that with a different kind of event. We are doing now a spring transplant sale. So now people can come out and buy starts for their yards and gardens and pots on their balconies and things like that. And that has proven just as financially viable and fun. Like we don't make it as big of an event as the U-Pick is, but we have activities for kids, and we had face painting, and it was fun. You know, it's fun walking people through how to pick what they want to grow and things like that. I think what I have noticed growing in Central Texas with the changing of the weather is that it's kind of like everything needs to start a month earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like my example from this year is if I could have gotten the tomatoes in 2 weeks earlier than I did, like at the end of February instead of the middle of March, they would have come in right before peak bug. And I could have gotten up, I think, a better harvest instead of they all came in at peak bug.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas, our tomato season is like 6 weeks. It's nothing, you know? So I think everything just is, you know, but then when you start planting in February is when historically, even before Winter Storm Uri, which was the spring of 2021, February is when we get really nasty weather.
Yes.
You know, I think they've actually changed, and Haley, maybe you know this, I think they've actually changed the first and last frost dates for Central Texas based on these changing weather patterns. So it used to be like last frost was March 15th or April, March.
It was
and
March.
Then the first frost was like Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
And now last frost could be
like Thanksgiving.
I forget, but they
like
they
November
have changed them.
usually.
Yeah.
Now it's like November to February pretty much. So like that little shortened window.
And the summer, people, kids in the summertime, kids are out of school, and people are looking for events to take children to, to occupy. So being able to have a U-Pick event in the summer would be so much fun, except it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Because it's so hot. And we don't want people fainting in the fields and horrible things like that. So doing a summer event is just not a viable thing. We've talked about like if we can get a pumpkin patch going, like maybe we do a little Halloween thing, and it's not that big a deal, but we have people come and pick pumpkins. It's trying to find trying to just find that window of where we can be successful, but that also lines up with when we have food growing.
Yeah. They often don't.
So I don't know if I answered your question, but it's yeah.
No, absolutely. I feel like that's exactly what I was getting at, just kind of understanding some of the challenges when it comes to having something that is very time-based and very weather-based versus, things that are comfortable for humans, which is not always in line with those things too. So yeah, it is interesting being in a southern state, generally just growing food, but I have noticed, especially the last few years, just how intense like the summers and winters are getting. We just kind of experience these microclimate events where it's like 2 weeks of really prime weather, and that's your window. Like you've got that window to make or break the next 2 months, which is really intense. Like not a lot of other places work on that same scale, but we're gonna be wrapping up here soon. If people have questions, I think there's like a Q&A button, but we can also wait until we're done. But if you have any advice, Malia, what would you offer to growers and businesses who are looking to involve something more community-based, like a U-Pick, like a transplant cell, anything that like brings consumers into the farm? What advice might you have for them?
I have heard, or I just think of it this way. Farming should be like your financial portfolio. It should be diversified.
Well,
it's hard to pay the bills just slinging vegetables. So like you mentioned agritourism at the top of the hour. We don't do agritourism, but that there are several farms in the area that do. Like you have a tiny home on your property that people can rent, and they can maybe, if they want, they can come do some farm work as part of their staying there. Um, Education opportunities, so holding workshops, which we're hoping to do more of, to invite the community into. We've done some. We're having one in November, actually, related to soil science. Uh, Community, inviting volunteer groups, not just community like walk off the street volunteers, who are awesome, by the way, but for us, we have some corporate volunteer relationships where they bring
Mhm.
out like 25, I mean,
Yeah.
we've had upwards of 40 people.
Mhm.
And having that many hands all at once means I can get some really big projects done in like a quarter of the time it would
That's
take
right.
me and and this team to do it. And because we're awesome and yeah, I mean, I'm just being silly, but because I think because we're friendly and we invite people in and we have a good mission and we want to share. Some of those corporate groups have ended up becoming donors.
Wow.
And so developing those relationships with the companies in your area, like we're lucky, we happen to live in Austin. So we have a huge healthcare and a huge tech base. So we've had
Mhm.
Athena Health out. Whole Foods is one of our, not only do we partner with their Whole Cities Foundation, but they bring
Mhm.
their VPs out as part of their like president's
Oh,
retreat. They came out, all the VPs came out and did a day on the farm. Um,
wow.
uh, HEB, we have a relationship with HEB, but I don't know if we've had any HEB people come out yet. That's something I might mention that we should invite them over.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
and so that in line with our values, of course. But inviting those kinds of people to come in and say this could be really fun for your employees, and talking about the health benefits of getting people who work at a desk outside occasionally.
Oh, yes.
There is science behind, right? Science. I worked at a desk for a really long time and you could not pay me enough money to go back to it. Nope, I don't care.
Hard. It's
Uh,
hard.
but just, I mean, a volunteer event where, I mean, again, it's a timing thing. You're not going to get a whole lot of volunteers in the summer, but in the spring and in the fall, which is when you need a lot of hands, actually, those are the two peak seasons.
Mhm.
Inviting the companies in your area to come and have it almost like couch it like a wellness event, like come get your hands in the soil. There's science behind that it improves your mental health, that it spikes dopamine and serotonin and all those things that make us feel good, and fresh air, and we'll give you vegetables. We often make like to-go bags for people so that people
Yeah,
have a
yeah.
little takeaway with them of a bag of veggies. And people really dig it. We've had groups come back year over year over year.
Wow,
And again, it's about that relationship. It's about that relationship building.
for sure.
Um, and if you can do things like have a farm stand out front that just says pay what you want. We all know how to do QR codes these days and do Venmo or
Yep.
whatever. Like just set out some veggies on a farm stand and have a big sign that says take what you want and leave what you think it's worth. And just see what happens. That can't be your
Yeah,
only business model, of course, but
for
it's nice
sure.
when you have a have a farm in like a residential area like we do. It's nice. Um, we've talked about it. We haven't done it yet, but we've talked about just, as a way to give back to our neighbors, like let's put food out there and just, um, um,
Yeah.
see who comes by and talks to us.
Yeah, of
So,
course.
so all the different ways that you can get your farm sort of into the community, beyond just what market channels are you selling to. But I mean, that's a big question too. My boss likes to tell me you can't grow it unless you can sell it.
That's right. You
And
get
I'm like, but
into
I want to grow kohlrabi.
I know.
Nobody wants kohlrabi.
Yeah, you get into
It's
farming
my
to
favorite thing.
you make money selling vegetables, not growing them. That's something Laura
That's right.
shared with me very early on. I was like, so true. That's right.
Right. Me too.
Somebody asked in the Q&A about something we talked a little bit earlier when having people on the farm is the question of pets, and especially like in a big city like Austin, people love their pets. We rely on our pets for like emotional support and also just wanting to share life with them. Do you have any issues with people wanting to bring their pets to you pig events, or does FarmShare have a policy about pets on the farm?
That's a really good question. I don't think we've had, I don't know if we explicitly say don't bring your pet, but I think people generally know that pets and farms don't bring your chihuahua to the farm. Um, but we do have the neighborhood has a lot of dogs that run
Mhm.
around in packs, and we just try to keep them out of the fields.
Yeah.
We are lucky in that our farm, even if somebody did bring their pet, like say they had a service animal like that, we're not going to question. Obviously, you know, if if you have a service animal that you need, you are welcome, because we're lucky in that we have enough space around the fields, like roads,
Mhm.
that people could walk with their pets. They just wouldn't be able to go into the areas where the food is growing.
Right.
But it's not really, I would say it's not really a problem that we've had, I would
For
say.
sure.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
that's
that was
good to
what,
think about.
yeah, certainly because pets are sometimes seamless with the life they have with their owners, and you always want people to feel comfortable. Um, and
Yeah.
I think before, we kind of finish our last thoughts here, if anybody listening has any questions they want to ask Malia, you can drop them in the chat. You can also drop them in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them right before the top of the hour here. Um, but yeah, I just want to say, like, overall, this conversation, things that are running through my mind also as like a small farm business owner, the idea of diversifying and really grounding support in relationships is so big, because as small farmers, we're expected to do so much. Not only to be the part of like the provider, the educator, the planner, the coordinator, right? All the different hats that we wear, but there's also a lot of reliance in farming. We rely on the people we work with, support from the community, whether that is like physical or financial. And I just really enjoyed you sharing your experiences about, creating that community culture and all the benefits that come with that. It's a really, really beautiful thing. And it also makes me want to come out to FarmShare. I haven't been in a while, so I need to come by.
I would love for you to come out to Farm Share. Yes, of course. Always. Always. Yeah, that was really that. And just speaking of education, that was one of the one of the best parts to me about this kind of farmer training program that has been developed here at Farm Share is that farm visits are such a big part of the 5 months. It's like once a week. If not, you go to two different, every farm is as different as every farmer. And it's a way to get plugged into the community. I mean,
Mhm.
other farmers that I can call to say, how did you do this? Or how did you do that? And we all show up at the same conferences and we talk about like what's going on. And we're actually working on the not-for-profit farms in this area about, we're so busy, it's hard to see each other. So how about we come out and volunteer on each other's farms? So
Mm,
how about I go work at Urban Roots for a morning with Jacob and
yeah.
them, and maybe Jacob and George will come out and work on our farm, and that way we can support each other while we're still like doing the work that it's really hard to pull us away from,
Yeah.
but
And
we're still
sharing
maintaining
knowledge too.
community. Exactly. Yeah, Jacob. Yeah. Everybody. That's why it's in my bio. The thank you to every farmer in the Central Texas farming community that is a friend and is willing to share what it has been like and what it's like now and what they're thinking about for the future. And it has accelerated, like developing those relationships personally has just accelerated my entry into this whole brave new world that I just love.
Mm,
And so thank you to all of you out there for being the farmers that you are and interested in community. Because I really do think that that's the way farming is going to have to go if we're going to keep being able to do this. Is it's got to be collaborative. It has to be part of the community.
sure.
Um, uh, that's a whole nother webinar,
Yeah, for sure. I
right?
mean, so much gratitude in saying that though. Like, yeah, I feel like sometimes the best lessons we get are not when we expect them. And I've learned so much from my being with all my other farmers, like watching them. Also just by happenstance of being around them and being like, oh, like that's crazy. I didn't know that's how you do that. You know, it's just you get so much more detail and um so much more input when you can just have that time together. It's not something we always get on the farms, but when we make space to be close, I think a lot of that knowledge sharing can really flourish. And yeah, I don't want to get too gushy here, but I just want to thank you for your time and just helping us understand the mission of Farm Share and also how you've, yeah, been looking at communities of cultures of, community and food safety. It's been really amazing to hear. I don't know, just also watching you talk is so inspiring too. Like knowing your career, like coming to this field and just like the passion you bring. I have so much respect for it. I deeply appreciate having someone like you in the community. And yeah, if you have anything else you want to plug for yourself or Farm Share, let us know and we'll be happy to send it along to people.
No, just to thank you back for inviting me to talk about this stuff. I mean, I am probably uh cheerleadery about it. I'm rah about farming. Um, no, I am grateful that there are people out there who are willing to do it. Because it is hard and it is and doing these kinds of things like these webinars and inviting the people that you invite to this thing like that's part of getting me off of of the daily work of the farm so that I can think about really what it means to me to be a farmer. Like, why am I doing this?
Mhm.
Why am I here? That to me is what I would leave people with, because I'm sure you all know the answer, but sometimes, honestly, sometimes I get busy and I forget why. I forget that I am having more fun than I've ever had in my entire life. And I don't ever want to lose that joy of what we do. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So thank you
yeah.
for giving me a break in the day to
Well
talk about
said.
this cool stuff.
Of course. I'm so glad we could catch up today and I'll go ahead and stop the recording for us. So just thank you for being here. I'll pause now.
Thank
Um,
you.